Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. I'm at the Motor City Mad Mouth, and I've got a guy on here who has the same degree as I do, or I do him, depending on the grade. Okay, his name is Chip Tarkenton, and yes, for a lot of you football people that want to know, he is the nephew of great quarterback Frank Tarkenton, who caused a lot of havoc for a lot of teams with his ability to scramble. But I'm glad that Chip was able to scramble over here to spend some time with us. I had to throw that analogy. Welcome to the show, Chip.
Thanks, Scott. Great to be here with you this evening.
Well, we're glad to have you. Sorry, let's dive into your background a little bit.
All
You've
right.
been a broadcaster for 38 years and 11 months. Why don't you go ahead and summarize your experience as a broadcaster, however way you want to do it?
Well, we'll try to be as brief as we can. It started. Do you remember the Mary Tyler Moore show
Oh,
and Ted
yeah.
Baxter,
Yeah.
where he said it all started in a tiny 1,000 watt AM radio station?
Yeah.
That's true for me. It was a 1,000 watt AM and a 3,000 watt FM, and I started there really as a young guy. At 19, I was full time working and worked my way up through college. I was going to school full time and trying to do the best I could with that, and it turned into halftime while I was working full time. So I spent a lot of years in radio, spent 2 years in newspaper. I really wanted to get into television, but I thought the background of those two would be huge for me moving forward. And I think it was the right decision because I was old enough trying to get into television. I wasn't 20, 21, was closing in on 25 when I got in. And so that was a pretty good age to jump in. It wasn't like I just
Right.
had graduated, even though I had just had graduated because it took so long to get through school. And
Hmm.
26 glorious years in local television, started broadcasting football and basketball games a long time ago, longer than that. And I have loved every minute of doing those games. And so feel really, really fortunate I'm still able to do those today.
So you talk about the fact that you've obviously, you talk about radio, TV, newspaper, 36 years. You did play-by-play. You were an analyst and you were a sideline reporter. Which one of those did you like the most?
Well, I'm still doing play-by-play with Old Dominion. I do their home football games on ESPN Plus, and I do the women's basketball as well. And then for VMI, I do the analyst role. I've been doing that for about 10 years or so and have a great time. One of my best friends is the play-by-play guy there. His name's Wade Branner, and he went to school there and worked there for a long time. The sidelines really started me off. That was the first shot I had, and it was a long, long time ago that I got to do sidelines and had the great fortune of working for ABC to do that and had some great games. It was fun to be in Purdue the first time the Boilermakers had defeated Notre Dame at home, and a guy named Drew Brees. You probably heard of Drew Brees. He was playing quarterback
Right.
for Purdue at that time. So to do that game, especially with people like Brent Musburger and Dan Fouts and the executive producer for college football with ABC, Bob Goodrich. So I had so many of these great experiences, and I just kept doing and doing and doing and had more good luck of getting to do all kind of positions, play-by-play, sidelines, or an analyst. And I got to be honest, I love all of them. They're all unique in their own way, and I just enjoy the games. I've loved college football and college basketball for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, Brent Musburg has always been an idol of mine. I've met him a couple times.
Yeah.
Once over at the Final Four when I was just walking around and he was signing autographs. But the real time I spent with him was on a Christmas Day game when the Pistons were up playing the Orlando Magic and we ate together. I wish I'd had a camera phone then. Then again, how many times do we wish we had a camera phone? Never we break ourselves and have internal concussions over what we should have had. Seriously. But you're getting seriously out of me anyways. All right, let's talk about your sports anchor at WRIC TV in Richmond. You had that job from like 1988, excuse me, to
Yeah.
5 2011. What was that like being a sports anchor in a local market out in Richmond?
Well, that was the fourth station that I was in. My first job was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I was a weekend anchor there. I went to Birmingham, Alabama, where I became the weekday guy. Same thing in Asheville, North Carolina. And then
Right.
my soon-to-be wife was working for the United States Senate in Washington, D.C., and it really was not a good situation for me to try to be in Asheville and her to try to be in Washington.
Right.
So this position opened, which turned to be a sensational job for me, and I was here, a good 23 years as a sports director. And
Right.
Just loved it. But I continued to do the play-by-play in the games because that's really what I thought was the best thing for me to do. And television has drastically changed over the past 10, 12, 13 years since
Right.
I was in it on a daily, day-to-day basis. And I think that I made the right decision from the get-go. And it's been just a much easier life for me and getting to do more of what I really like to do, which is the games.
I've yearned to do play by play. The opportunity's never presented itself. I've done a little bit here and there in baseball, which I've done. Never done any basketball, but I had a couple stints down in North Carolina with a when I was in Gastonia doing some American Legion, and then
Yeah.
I did a little bit up in Palm Beach. I did one game in the Florida State League and then a little bit in Double A for Pensacola, but not as much as I want to. And baseball is all about telling stories. So to me, like myself, and that's one thing we both are looking at each other on LinkedIn. We both have degrees in BA degrees in speech communication. What did you learn the most from that degree? Obviously, and you went to the Georgia Bulldogs as well.
Well, I grew up in Athens mostly,
Okay.
and before I finished my high school in Atlanta, Georgia, a great place for me to go, which was Lakeside High School. I still love being involved with that group as much as I possibly can. And what I learned in speech communication, I think, is it helps you do the enunciations, it helps you to call games, it helps you to speak in public. And I've been
Right.
a lot of opportunities to do a lot of those things, and you spin back to those times that you were in speech classes. And I think
Right.
that was one of the best things to happen. When I started doing some senior tennis, I had a chance to do senior tennis. I've done some golf. I've done all kind of play by
Hmm.
play and so forth. And I think having that speech background, you learn and you understand, and you also can go back. I can remember listening to audio of Walter Cronkite and of
Oh,
Peter
gee.
Jennings, and really listening to these folks, and then listening to some of the great people like Pat Summerall when he would do play by play. And when you hear the way they describe and the way that they explain and the way that they carry their games, and also work with your partners, whether you have just a analyst with you or a sideline person as well, you learn how to work together. And
Right.
that's what makes this broadcast better. We have a conversation most of the time I'm doing games where one, and then the third one is also on the sideline. That's part of it. If you have the sideline, if not, the
Right.
third party is the audience. And that's
Right.
exactly a three-way talk is the best way to talk.
Yeah, you talked about Walter Cronkite, Pat Summerall. Who was the other name that you mentioned?
Who was the other name I
Was it
just
Peter Jennings? Did you say?
Peter Jennings, yeah, that was the
Yeah.
other one. I was going to think there
Okay.
for a second because I'm rattling names out here that I listened to, and even the guy that was the radio voice of the University of Georgia, Larry Munson. I used to listen to Larry because he'd growl, gotta go, dogs, get down hard. I mean, he was just fun to listen to. So you learn styles, you learn staccato, you learn how to pronounce, you learn how to not talk. There's many times when you in television, especially, you have to let the crowd and the pictures tell the story.
Right.
You don't have to tell the story. The story is there.
See that book, Lessons from the Microphone?
I see it.
Okay, let me tell you, I put tons of names in this edition. Now, when I do the sequel, there won't be as many names. It'll be more situational, I think.
Mhm.
And I think that's important when you understand how you learn from different people, whether you've met these people or not.
Correct.
And the thing I was able to get out of my speech communication degree is I have a passion for public speaking, number one, interpersonal communication, communicating with others around you, and group communication as well.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, those are blowout classes. You need to know what you're dealing with. It's an underrated degree, is what I think it really is.
Well, it is. No question. And if you can get up and speak in public, I think it
Yeah.
makes it easier for you to get behind a microphone and to be on camera and every other thing. Because that's one of the hardest things for folks to do is get up and speak in public.
Yeah, well, it's funny how you say that because you know what? You lead into my next segue on this.
Woo!
Well, I can see the chemistry with me and you. I see it. I feel it. I know it. Okay.
I
Would you
like
like,
that.
what's that?
I love that. That's great.
Oh, I know. I mean, come on. Seriously, I didn't take a dump pill after 44 years in this business. No way, Jose. Or who's the one that says, holy moly?
Holy moly. Yeah, there's all kind of folks that have all
Wasn't
those
that one
sayings.
Harry Carey?
Yeah, it was. Holy cow, he said. Holy cow.
All right, so you got Harry Carey for Holy Cow. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
Holy Moly. Well, that's the difference. Fred
Yeah.
Sanford used to say it all the time. That's
Yeah.
when he had goats around him. But it's hard you can tell that I really like that show when I
Yeah.
see it once in a while.
Yeah,
So,
of
all right,
course.
as we segue into this, I can't wait till we do one in person and do other stuff here because you will not be a one trick pony if I have anything to say about it. You do. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of fun on future ones, but at
Sounds
least it
great.
started here. All
You
right,
better
so
be
tell me.
sure folks can put up with us this long, much less if we do it again.
Oh God, we'll be a hit. I'm not even worried about that. I'm really not. And but here's the thing, okay? Would you advise young sports media professionals that you need to be a good writer before you delve into broadcasting?
Well, I think that if you can write, it helps you when you speak. I
Right,
think that it ties in together. And I've never thought, okay, you're a great writer, Chip. You're the greatest writer. I've never ever thought that. I thought I could write for the ear, and for the ear meant radio and television. For the eye, I worked really hard learning to do that. And we remember the old days where you used to call it a hook rather than a lead, and you were taught
right,
how to do that when you were writing in the newspaper. Of course, that's changed, much different now. But if you can do that, it really puts your thoughts together, and you do that when you're doing a game. You're telling a story. It's pretty
right,
much similar to what you're doing with writing a story. So you kind of have to understand that to make that work. And not every game plays out with the storyline you think it will, and that's the fun of the games.
right,
But you also have to be able to adapt to that. Same way when you're writing a story. When you're writing a story, chances are you go back and reread, you're going to make some edits, you're going to change some things.
right.
And that's the other beauty of being able to have that.
Well, again, we both know, being in the
Yeah.
business a while, that storytelling is what it's all about,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
more so on radio because they're
Correct.
expecting you. And well, they're not. Me personally, I'd rather be on the radio, not on TV. It's not like I have Hollywood looks here. Not that I'm ashamed of my looks by any means, but I can tell you right now that I like radio because of the fact that I have to tell a story and I have to be quicker with my
You know,
one liners and I
correct.
have to be able to visualize to these people. We talked about this the other day, and I'm going to mention it. I remember at a restaurant in Coral Springs, a friend of mine was managing the place, okay? And we just opened up the restaurant, okay? And I had to do a show with a colleague on boxing. So I asked this guy, he'd do anything in the world. I said, do me a favor, you got to shut the music down because, I mean, he's going to worry about it at 11 o'clock in the morning. No. So I said, sure, no problem. So I'm sitting on one end of the restaurant, okay, and this guy, his name is AJ, by the way.
Yeah.
And then, he's going over toward the kitchen and he hears my voice booming. And I mean, booming. You had the biggest high ceilings on the planet. I'm telling you. Okay. And I'm going to tell you right now, he was laughing so hard all the way to the kitchen, which, by the way, Chip was on the other side of the restaurant. I said, man, I knew he had a deep voice, but I didn't know it was going to boom from one end of the restaurant to the other. And he
Okay.
was laughing and he liked it. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with what he did. And one of his hosts would say, "Hey, I like your way of doing things there. You going to come back and do more of these?" I said, "Well, why not? I mean, as long as we have the situation." But I don't know. When you deal with a guy like Ernie Harwell, who, by the way,
Oh,
you've heard of,
oh yeah.
who's your mentor. Okay, you know full well that you need people that can give you the ins and outs of storytelling, anyways, and that's
Yes.
really what it's all about. But the fact that you've been able to do it on TV, more power to you. I mean, that to me is just something that and you've done it for a while and you sustained it for a long time, which makes it even more interesting in its own right. So, with that said, what advice would you give to students through new media? I mean, let's face it, new media is a different animal.
Totally.
Now I find myself in a situation where access is limited when you go to games, more so now than it ever has. So I find myself writing stories, inserting a podcast inside of it, or you have the pictures too, which you always have.
Yeah.
But you have to get creative. But what's your definition of what you think new media is? And do you like it or you dislike it? Even though we both know we have to adapt to it.
You do have to adapt to it, and we were talking the other day, and I told you there's a lot of games I'm doing, and I look down in the stands, and folks are watching another game, or two games, or three games on their phones, sitting in the stands, because you have that ability now. your conference games come up and you can see what the other schools are doing because of a lot of the streaming services. Streaming, I could tell you a great streaming story when it was first really getting some get up and go. And there was some folks pushing it, and they thought, well, this might be the future, and we're going to go maybe 1999, 2000, 2001. I had an opportunity to do some of those games that were some of the early streams, and we went to Maryland and Virginia and Wake Forest and a bunch of other schools. But you knew immediately because it would cut down on the cost. So we went from having a big truck with ABC
Right.
to having a small truck, and instead of what seemed like a cast of thousands, we had 4 folks sitting in the truck. We had 4 cameras rather than 14.
Hmm.
Sometimes you'd have 5 or 6 because you could actually put some stationary that would be up top to get some wide shots.
Right.
And everybody wanted to know after the game, so, well, you got less graphics and all that stuff, but what do you think? And I said, I'm a viewer. I just want to see the games. I don't
Right.
need 40 million camera angles. I
Right.
just want to see the games. For a championship game, okay. For a bowl game, maybe a little different. But oh my goodness, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And now you see almost every college, high schools are doing this now. And this is the thing, I'm leading into the young folks. You have opportunities. If you want to jump up and say, hey, let me try this, start it in high school. Colleges and universities like crazy have these doors open. Throw yourself at the mercy of the sports information folks and go, hey, let me do this. Give me a
Right.
chance. And it's amazing what you can do. There are so many schools now that have opportunities that they actually teach the classes all the way through of how you can do
Wow.
this in
Wow.
all of the different streaming platforms and radio and anything. You can, if you want it, you can go get it. A lot easier when I was coming along. There weren't as many opportunities. So you were very fortunate when you got in the door, and you did. You just had to hang on. And going into year 35 doing these, yeah, that's a pretty good number. I'm pretty proud of that I've been able to hang in there that long. But I really think that, you have to just keep working, and you have to keep the fire in the belly to do it. You have to want to do it. You have to enjoy it. You have to be a real love. And my wife would tell you, I have loved every minute of it. I just love doing it.
Well, you again, you transition better than any guest I've ever had. So
I'm
we're
working on it.
talking about streaming. You're giving me your thoughts about streaming. So with that said, okay, how easily for you was it a transition to get acclimated to streaming?
Well, to me, streaming is exactly the same thing as television. It's just where it goes out is a little different.
Right.
You're watching a stream most of the time when you're watching your TV because it's all on the internet. Everything is streamed, everything's on the internet. So there's really no difference for me doing a game. And it never was when we were going from that route.
Right.
And I saw that very quickly. I didn't know what it might be like the first time I did it. I thought there might be a lot of differences, but I
Right.
really don't feel any difference. In fact, I think it's probably the same in 99% of what it is. It's different when you have to go through the truck and how it beams up and so forth and so on like that. The technical stuff that I don't get involved with because
Right.
I don't need to know that. I need to know what to do with my part of the pie and to try to do that to the best ability that I have. And working with folks, it's imperative to me. Everybody that I work with, we're a team. And that
Right.
includes those running the camera, the producer, the director, anybody that is on our crew. We're a team. At the end of the basketball season last year, we made sure everybody that had helped us during the year, we made sure to get them a shout out by the end of the game because I thought it was important. Those young folks needed to be congratulated and thanked because they did a great job. I
Right.
think that makes everything better. So my job, it's not about Chip in any way, shape, or form. It's about those watching the game, those playing the game. All we should do is be, okay, here's names and numbers for you. Here's what the situation is, so forth and so on like that. And I try to have conversations because I just think it's so important. Those at home feel that. You
Right.
don't need to be screaming at them. You don't, for me anyway. Other people can do different with what way they do, but for me, I think that's the most important thing. It's like you and I having a conversation. The
Right.
third folks now are whoever's going to listen to this, whoever's hearing it, whoever's a part of it. They become that third party.
No, that's true too. I mean, one thing to do play by play where it's hard to have direct conversation with everybody unless you got people feeding you tweets because a lot of local broadcasts will do that once in a while. That they'll incorporate tweets in here. It'll give us guys a broadcast something to look at, and then
Right.
it helps as well. But I think the biggest thing you touched on, which is so good, is that you do have to have a conversation and have a free flow. Even
Yes,
though I haven't been able to do as many play-by-plays as I want, but I'll tell you what, I haven't given up on it,
right. You
nor have
should.
I given up public speaking. Oh no, no,
You
I
should.
figure I got about another year and a half of covering sporting events a little bit more, so I get what I need to for the book aspect of things. And then my second opportunity is either public speaking. And
Mm,
what I'm going to talk about with public speaking, and I know you encouraged me, is you have to be a good writer in
correct.
order to be a good broadcaster. And that's all I'm going to talk about because it's pretty
Yeah.
obvious. I mean, Tony Kornheiser's, Mike Wilbon's, and the
Great.
list goes on,
Great
started
example.
with newspapers until they ended up reaching a level where, they're good on the air too. You have to have command of the English
Right.
language. And if you can do that, well, that's writing, leads to broadcasting. What else do I have to say about it?
Well, another thing with this phone, and I love the way that we do it at Old Dominion. Sports information director there, Eric Bohannon, he texts us immediately when something big happens that we probably wouldn't know, like somebody moves to fourth on the all-time record at the
Right.
school. I mean, anything like that that we might need to know. Could be an injury update that we can't get that information up in a booth from the field. He is as good, if not the best SID I've ever worked with doing
Really?
games. He is that good. And just being around him is good for all of us because he gets it. He gets the broadcast end of it. And well, I just feel like having an opportunity to go down there is just wonderful for me. I feel the same way about VMI, but it's a little different with what we have to work with. We got a little more room at Old
Right.
Dominion, and it's a little easier for us to space when we tape part of the opens and so forth. It's
Right.
it's just a little easier to do that. But wow, like I said, I've just had a ball with all of it, and feel very grateful and very thankful for everybody that I've had a chance to work with. I'll give you a funny example. I told you I
Sure.
started that thing. It's been 35 years ago. The first game I had in television, I was on the sidelines, and it was where Old Dominion Stadium is now, but it was the old Foreman Field, and it was the Oyster Bowl between the Citadel and VMI. The
Okay.
gentleman that hired me as the weekend anchor in Chattanooga, Tennessee, is a guy named Randy Smith. He's in the Tennessee Hall of Fame for all of the stuff he did. He was on the Vol Radio Network. He was a great writer. He still writes now, and he had a voice that was just marvelous. And he is still one of my closest friends. He hired me, but he's the one that got me on that first game. And when I went back there 2 years ago now, it was surreal because I knew the part of the field that was Old Foreman Field, and I thought, wow, this is really cool to get a chance to
Mhm.
come back to the place that it started for me, and
Well,
so it means a lot to me to go down there.
I can imagine. So you and I are probably obviously one of the few people around these days that know what a cassette player is.
Yes, sir.
And oh boy, the adventures of the cassette players. Any interesting adventures that you've had with a cassette player? And I'll tell you one that I mentioned the other day.
Yeah, all of them were interesting because, like you, writing with a paper, I always had the cassette player because I always had it with the radio because that's what you have radio. You got to have sound.
Right.
So for me to make sure I got quotations correctly of what somebody really said, I would take the cassette everywhere I went. Just like I know you're going to tell this story, but this is how you made sure you had things right when you put them in quotes in print because that was for real.
Oh yeah. Well, I know you. I was kidding around with Kenny Albert a week ago. I was over at a convention. You've heard of the National Sports Media
Oh
Association,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, I've been a member the last 4 or 5 years. It's been pretty good for me. I like the people. When I get there, I get there. It's networking, but I have other things going. That just happens to be one. If I can get there, I will. If I can't, I can't. But the reality of the situation is yeah, nothing like the old cassette player. One story that stands out, and I have another one in the book. So when you get it, you'll see it. But I'm going to let this one out tonight, so everybody to watch and hear, is when I was covering a girls basketball game between, I think it was Armwood and Plant City. Yeah, I think it was. And I'll never forget when I told the women's basketball coach for Plant City, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I need to talk to you no matter what, win, lose, or draw. And that's it. And I don't mind telling you, the lady's name was Carolyn Renfro.
Yeah.
And her team got waxed. So, oh God, what am I going to have to deal with later? She wouldn't talk to me at all, the media or nothing.
Hmm.
So I said, okay, no problem. So what I decided to do is, you do what the editor tells you. You don't care what the coach does, right? I mean, I can get two stories out of this deal, a follow up and a game story. So what do you
Yeah.
think I'm going to do? I'm going to have to go out there and just be a content hunter, albeit I was a lot younger, but I still knew
Yeah.
what content hunter meant. So I went ahead, talked to the assistant coach,
Yeah.
and then I had one of the players blast the regular coach. And I mean, I dug
Mhm.
it out of her. I said,
Mhm.
you know what? Some
Yeah.
things you don't like to do, but you have to do what you got to do. And there comes a time where take the word characteristic and flush it down the toilet. This is what I had to do. So then the head coach calls up the paper, my paper, the Tampa Tribune, and they asked me about this. So I said, listen, I, I'm not gonna. It doesn't matter what the editor was. I have it on tape. When you develop a reputation inside of a newspaper, as I did with the
Yeah.
Tampa Tribune, they're not going to question you. They're not. But I said, you
No.
know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call
Yeah.
you back. I'm going to play you this very interview. No, you don't have to do it. I said, no. I kind of feel like I do have to do
Right.
this.
Right. Right.
It's called, you got to make sure that you feel pretty good about the fact that it's nice that they have your back, okay,
Right.
but nobody's going to question me. I used to be the most fluent individual when it comes to going back and forth, whether it's a 15-minute interview, a 2 hour one, and every quote right down to the last punctuation mark. So I bring the tape recorder down. I play it. We never done yet, but it was nice hearing the interview. Anyway, so
Yeah.
thank you. And that woman would cook meat. And you know what? I went on a relentless tear trying to get that woman fired, and I nearly got her to resign. And then I ended up graduating anyways. It didn't matter at all. Kind of went
Yeah.
away. But the point of the matter is this: when you have a cassette recorder, digital, whatever it is, you're taking away the sue factor, the liable factor, any of that.
Goes
What are they
away.
going to do? Can't do it, right?
Yep. And like you said, here we go again. This thing is magic. It still does the recording too. And I've told a lot of young folks that I said, hey, if you want to make sure you get quotes correct, because you remember the days folks wrote in shorthand. So,
Right.
you can sit there and that was one of the guys that I started in newspaper. He said, that's why they call me the scribbler. And I said, why is that? He said, because I just scribble when I'm getting interviews. And I was dying laughing at that. So I always thought that was comical. And he said, why you have that cassette? I said, because I don't know how to scribble. I said, that's the reason. I don't have a clue how to scribble.
If I sat there and told you how many times that my penmanship was criticized, you
Oh,
wouldn't be able to count on my 9 million hands if you tried. But
me
you did make me forced to bring out a story that I am going to mention here. I
Yeah.
had I had an instructor named C.J. Boston. Okay, I'll never forget. Okay, and this woman kept telling me, "Man, your handwriting is bad." She embarrassed me in front of the class. I said, "All right, okay, whatever." Everybody leaves. I said, her and I had a conversation. I said, "Listen, Miss Boston, I'm going to tell you something right now. I know it isn't very good, but you don't have to advertise it to the rest of my classmates. And number two, why do you think I use a typewriter and a darn computer? Oh, they didn't have one, but I had typewriters to avoid what you said. And I don't appreciate you going out there and telling it in front of everybody's class because remember one thing, I can do your evaluation and I guarantee my penmanship will be right when it comes to describing your teaching methods too." And if that woman didn't get the point, then I don't know. She was adorable brunette, and when I got done with her, she could have looked like an adorable gray-haired woman.
You mentioned that we had typing classes when I was a freshman. It was the best class I think I ever took because I didn't have to ever, learn to do the one finger. I could actually type when I went into the newspaper and these computers that the young folks when they first started getting these laptops they would go, oh my gosh, I don't know how to. It was easy. It wasn't hard at all to do that. But I think it was the best class I had. I learned a lot about how to. I never was Speedy Gonzalez doing it. I mean, I could type decently, but wasn't the fastest. But I could type. That was a big advantage.
I was a three-finger typer. Let me tell you something. One of the reasons I ended up at speech communication is when I went into the mass media department, they said to me, "Can you type 35 words a minute?" I said, "Heck no." But I can tell you one thing: I can work at the Tampa Tribune and not miss a deadline. Does that count for anything?
Should absolutely.
Well, they said no. So you know what I did? I don't know what I know. I was wearing tennis shoes. Don't remember what time. 40 years later, but I took my tennis shoes, walked across the hall, and there we go. speech communication.
Yeah.
Welcome me with open arms. Do I have to type certain words? Man, no, not at all. I mean, we don't care how fast you type. I'm a three-finger typer. You see this bad boy? I
There
did
you
it
go.
with three fingers for crying out loud, and outlined it with one of these.
Yep.
Okay, and but no, it is what it is. I mean, I wasn't a good typer. I never pretend to be. As long as it
No.
get the job done, who the heck cares?
You mentioned a cassette. I forgot to. I actually found one of the old cassettes and just did not bring it in here tonight. I had it and I thought I got to bring that, and then I absolutely forgot to bring it in. I would have loved to have held that thing up. Folks would have probably died laughing at that. That's pretty funny.
Well, it's called primitive age, and it'll lead me to a question that we're going to talk about in a few moments about millennials. But first and foremost, what are your thoughts about AI, which everybody knows is artificial intelligence?
My oldest son has been great on helping me understand just how beneficial it can be. And so, while it's going to be a slower turn for me at age 29 now, to be able to follow all the stuff the younger folks can do, I do see a lot of benefits to it. I also have some concerns because there's a lot of it I don't understand how some of it works, but he continues to show me things, and I do
Right,
think it can be helpful to a lot of folks. It's one of those things that as it continues to just expand and it's going to
right,
explode over the next year or two, I think all of us will get a little better with it. I didn't know how well I do with the phone. I'm probably
right,
not great with everything on the phone, but I'm comfortable enough with it. And I have a feeling at some point, I think AI will be fine. The thing that it can't do is it can't watch a game and then do
true,
the game. It can't really watch a game and then write the story. It can't really do some of those things that would have an impact necessarily on me.
right.
So, but I can see some benefits. But it's amazing what it can. It's really unbelievable. I almost feel like the Jetson age is coming.
The Jetson age, I like that. I mean, first of all, I wouldn't drive an electric car. I'm not really happy with them either. I mean, but AI to me, there's no way that I am letting AI rather write my books.
No,
I mean, my books are going to come from my stomach, my ears, and my three-finger typing on the
correct.
computer with what not with whiteout. Okay, that thing called the delete button does work. Okay, but yeah, I'm not big on electric cars or a lot of. It takes me a while to acclimate to a lot of new technology. I think one thing I know we can both agree on that for anybody to succeed in this business, you have to be different, you have to work hard, and you have to keep your word. And if you miss out any of the three, you're cooked. I don't care whether you're 50 years old, 19 years old, or whatever. If you don't have any of those three, I would find another occupation because mass media is the one place you can burn bridges faster than any other place out
Yes.
there.
Yes. And it is part of folks have to like you and like working with you. You have to
Right,
bring something to the table as well as the audience. And when I tell folks that when you're doing play by play, you just need to tell what's happening. Give the play by play. The analyst is the one who can watch and see the little bitty things that they can talk about or the big things that you really don't have time to do with the play by play. My idea is just to
right,
get to the play, set the stage for the next play, whatever it might be, and to have the conversation. If there's a flag on the field and they're trying to decide what the penalty is, well, the two of us can have a conversation and we can see the replays, and it's easy
right.
to have those conversations because you are thinking a lot of what those at home or wherever they're watching it are
Right.
thinking. So I think that's a great part of it is that you can do that, and I like being a part of that.
Yeah, well, again, the biggest thing I always tell people, you got to be different. It's one thing, you got to work hard and keep your word. But
Yep.
I've seen some people ad lib on
Mhm.
sideline
Yeah.
reports because they went the shortcut, and you can get your credibility destroyed pretty quickly on that. I won't mention names because it's really not necessary for the sake of this conversation. We're trying to teach people habits. But I always said, if you be different, you work hard, and you work hard and keep your word, and don't burn bridges either.
Right.
You burn bridges, boy, you're in real trouble. And I think that's the one thing I've noticed, which transitions me over to another aspect here. I have a lot of millennials that I've worked with in the past.
Hmm.
We both can admit that we're way older than they are. When you
Yes.
define what a millennial is, do you find that it's difficult to work with a millennial these days because we're so far apart with them? I mean, I like millennials, but by the same token, like myself and you, we had to learn the hard way, and I think they're going to have to learn the hard way too. But how do you like working with today's millennials?
Well, a lot of the millennials shoot some of the videos of the games that I'm at and that I'm broadcasting, and they have talent that I don't have at all. With they know how to manipulate the camera so much better than
Right,
I would have dreamt of. And a lot of them will come up and attempt to be a spotter so they can learn how we do games. We've had folks sit behind us and so forth during basketball because you can sit right on the court side to do the basketball games.
right,
I think that because there's so much more opportunity for the young folks now, that those who want to get in the business and who are getting into the business are seeing you have got to continue working hard, and
right,
you've got to show up, you've got to get after it, you've got to be on the team. And what I don't see out of the millennials very often that we work with is a gargantuan ego. I don't see that. There was a time when there were a lot of folks that may have come in and thought they had all the answers and knew things. I didn't have a lot of that, but there were other people I knew that said, "Oh, I don't like working with so and so." I look at it as an opportunity every time I get a young person to have a discussion with them about, well, what do you think you want to do in this business, or
right,
wherever it may be? And then I can get an idea of how can I help them to get there? What can I do to give them advice or people to contact or whatever it might be? And over the years, I've really been blown away by how many will get back to me and just say thank you. And I don't expect a thank you. I just do it because somebody had to give me that chance.
right.
I always look back at that and go, if I wouldn't have had that opportunity. Now, the difference was, I was in my middle to latter 20s the first time I got to do a game. It was different from sitting on a set
Yeah,
and doing a sportscast. It's a much different life. These young people have been around all the electronical stuff
right.
that you can imagine. So they have a big leg up over what we had.
Yeah,
But I love that part. I taught some classes at a local boys' high school this year. I taught two in the fall semester and two in the spring. One was a journalism, one was a broadcasting. They had a lot of similarities to them, but I had a blast with these young folks,
me too.
and it's something that I really felt like I was giving something back and trying to help some of them that are going to college and universities that want to be in this field. And I said, here's what you need to do. Here's who you need to go try to see. And I'm still trying to help those who want to do this because I love it so much that you want to pass it down. Make your time doing what you have done, make it important for somebody else to take it up because I won't do this forever, obviously. But I think I'd rather leave to somebody else to do something than folks, going, oh my gosh, you've had all these years. Yes, very fortunate to have them, but it's not really about me. It's about the future. And somebody helped me. I want to help somebody else now.
It's a great attitude. There's no question millennials are unbelievable on the technological side.
Yes.
They're way more than we could ever even think of knowing
Yes.
what we had. The only reason why I probably won't teach privately as a tutor anymore is, I don't have time to really invest that much time because there's a business to be. So what I've done it before, and I hope that individual does well. And there's some that just either have the ability to accept tough coaching and some just don't. I mean, that's okay. I don't have any reason to knock them if they feel that they can find somebody better than me. I don't really care. I mean, and if I have to start charging them, I will, but I don't have the time anymore because, for me, the best way to really for these youngsters to go out there and learn is they have to go out there and prove that they have a good work ethic and they can handle tough coaching and
Yep.
define what they are. Because you know what, that you can find out with them within about a year or two. They won't be in the business anyways if they don't figure out a lot of the knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone. That's for sure.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Some of them find out they don't like the hours or the
yeah,
time it takes. I wish I could tell folks some of the crazy things over the years of what I would do. Just you couldn't believe the hours trying to prepare while you're doing local TV, and you leave on
yeah,
a Friday night after the late show, and you've taped for the morning, and you're driving 6 hours overnight after you've worked all day.
yeah,
You pull into a hotel somewhere and you say, I just need it for 3 hours because that's all the time you had to sleep. Because
right.
we had a lot of noon kickoffs. Oh my goodness! You do the game, you drive home, and you got two little ones at home when you get home, and you're worn out. Sunday, you're useless. And why? They go, why would you do that? I go, it's
Uh,
doing the reps. If you don't do them, and if you don't keep doing them, you don't get any better, and you surely don't have opportunities. If you turn down opportunities, guess what? Opportunities will eventually turn you down, and they won't come your way.
That's true. And I find a lot of times from experience, okay, males work better with males, females work better with females, is what I've noticed a lot of times because there's that certain bond that they have. I'm not saying you can't find a female that doesn't work well with a male. I'm
Yeah,
not going there. I'm not trying to say, hey, this, no, no, it's not what I'm saying. But
right.
sometimes they have a different approach and blend differently. But I can tell you one thing no millennial could handle the situation I had at the Florida State League All Star game, I believe it was in 1985 when I'm trying to do a story for the Tampa Tribune again, and I'm typing it on my little computer, and you have those little suction cups where you have to stick the phone in there, and you have a brand new facility. Get this, brand new facility. I sent it 5 times, and I couldn't get the stupid story sent. I'm thinking, great. I got 2 stories to send, so I had to talk to my editor. Hey, I need you to do me a favor. You need to give me 30 more minutes. I didn't come all the way out here to not even get what you asked to do, what you asked me to do. So, okay, so do you have another way of getting it here? Yeah, I'm going to dictate both of them and just do the best you can. And I'll do that because I had a good relationship with the editor.
Correct.
And, and you know what? I could have put a famous picture in my book, but I put that story in my book just to let people know that I thrived under that. Yeah, and the guy said to me afterwards, you know what? That you did a heck of a job there. You really, really did, because you know what? That was a tough situation for you to be in. It
Yeah,
really, really was, and you blew it out like there was nothing. Well,
that's
let's face the reality. We don't have the internet back then, and in fact, one of my old buddies, Lynn Henning, I told him the last time I was here at this stadium, Osceola County Stadium, and what happened. So yeah, it's a much different situation. I'm not worried about dictating my story now. That's for sure.
no,
But
you're
that
not.
was you talk about being put inside the a gut wrenching experience. That was it. That was being in a sinkhole if I ever saw one.
Yeah,
But
I get it.
yeah, but you know what? I thrive on it, and it was such a good story that I had to go out there and put it in my book
Yeah,
anyway. So, but I don't have anything against millennials. I think obviously, the future depends on these, so you hope that we can produce some good journalists,
oh,
technicians, and
absolutely,
whatnot out of them. But I
absolutely.
think the generation gap between somebody that's 60 versus 20 is a bit long, and you have to hope and pray that you can relate to them to the best of your ability as much as you can and support them. Because I'm like you, I would rather give something back to this industry because somebody gave
Correct.
me a chance to.
Right. And I've worked, I think I've worked pretty hard on that. I try to get to know those young folks because I want them to feel comfortable with me, just like the high school kids I was teaching. I wanted them to feel comfortable with me and to where they could ask anything. And I was not judgmental on anything that they asked. And, uh,
Right.
I just enjoyed that. And you were talking about the folks you work with. I can go down the list of name after name people I've worked with over the years. And I think I've been really, really fortunate, or somebody's just taken care of me to where I don't think I've ever had a bad experience of working with anybody for any of the games. I don't think I've ever had that. And the group that I get to work with now is just, I mean, they're just outstanding of who I get to work with on a regular basis. And I told you about Wade Branner at VMI, and Andy Mishaw does the football games with me at
Right.
Old Dominion, and Kim Aston does the women's basketball game. She was a great player there. But these folks, I mean, Andy and Kim are just great people. And like I
Right.
said, I've known Wade forever, and he's one of my best friends. So I just feel it's a joy to be around them. That's how I feel about it.
That's okay. All right. So give me your thoughts, Chip, on social media.
Well, it's here to stay, and I think it will continue to change over the years, as it already has. You remember it first started with just like Facebook was the big thing, and now you got, I tease folks, I call it Instasham rather than Instagram because I just felt like it was something funny to say. LinkedIn is another one, and Messenger. I mean, you've got so many other things, and the TikTok thing, I don't go there at all. Don't have any idea of a whole lot with it. Just know all the young people are on that. It's just so many that continue to explode. Uh, Once again, it's a great way for me to stay in touch on the ones that I'm on, and I'm full with all of those, and luckily that I've got a lot of great friends who I don't get to see very much anymore because we don't live close to each other. But it's a
Right.
great way to stay connected and to find out when things are going on in their lives and to celebrate with them or to cry with them if it's some kind of tragedy that's taken place. And to me, that's almost as good as being with somebody. If you can just keep touch. That was the one thing I told my students and the one thing I've told my boys. Stay connected to as many people as you can because those are the ones who look after you, who care about you, and you care about them. You do care about them. And people don't care what you know till they know you care. They just know you. They have to think that you care about them to be important. And I had one of those conversations today with somebody I hadn't talked to in quite a while, and it did both of us, I think, a lot of good. We just had not been able to connect for quite a while, just that and the other. But boy, that's why I think those things are great. And thank goodness we have cell phones
Yeah.
because boy, that's a lot of times when I'm driving back from games, I can make phone calls that I can't have time to make a lot of times because I'm doing something else. But in that
Right.
car
Oh
at
yeah.
windshield time, you can make some phone calls, and I love doing that.
Yeah. Well, we both can agree that there's no I in team number one
Yeah.
because you obviously have to do that. So tell me, Chip, what's your favorite sport to do play by play?
Well, I think because I grew up around football so much and so much influence with Uncle Fran and even my dad, and I loved it. And my dad, as I was growing up, was on the radio. He did color for the local high school football
Right.
team. I got to start going when I was in sixth, seventh, eighth grade, and I was bitten hard. I mean, the
Right.
bite was just all over me about doing games, and I fell in love with the radio. Disc jockey, you say that now, most folks don't know what that is, but you had to do everything: commercial work. You read the news, the sports, the weather, whatever it was. You did commercials, you did all of that, and the same way with the newspaper. I really thought when I got in the newspaper, I might stay even longer than the 2 years, but then I had a guy who was like he is the big brother that I didn't have, who
Right.
was on Channel 5 in Atlanta, WAGA. His name was Bill Hartman. His dad, very famous former football player and coach at the University of Georgia. And I
Right.
used to go watch him at Channel 5. And everybody thought I was Bill's little brother, which just thrilled me. And so I watched him, and he goes, "All right, when you get through with college, I know you're working and going to school, and it's going to take a while, but you're going to come over here, and I'm going to get you a resume tape, and we're going to get you a job. You need to be in television." And that's what happened. I went over, my wife and I, we weren't married yet. We went over and made an audition tape, and I tucked the tape under my arm. And 6 weeks later, the door opened in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so Bill Hartman is always going to be my hero because Bill's always been there for me. And we are still in touch. When I'm in Athens, I try to see Bill Hartman just about every time I'm there.
Now, what's amazing too, and I know this, there's no fault of the individual, but you have a lot of nepotism in the business where you have a father gets in, the son has the upper hand to get
Yep.
in. There's no way it's going to ever go away, is it?
No,
It's
no.
always been that way.
Um, Dad doing those games just opened the eye for me to see that wow,
Right.
this might be something I would really like to do. And I tried to spot and learn how to do that, but I was pretty young. I'd get caught up in the game probably more than I helped the play-by-play guy. But you got a feel for it, and I tell folks when you're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, and you get to go in an NFL locker room, that's pretty cool and you get to go on Yankee Stadium and walk on the turf of Yankee Stadium as a young guy when Fran was playing for the Giants, and he and I are extremely close. We talk at least once a month. I
Yeah.
look a lot like him. I sound a lot like him. He would introduce me as this is my oldest son Dipper. He's always called me Dipper, and he was just Uncle Fran. It just happened to be he played pro football, and it was
Right.
pretty neat. But he's always been, and my dad's been gone 10 years this month, and so my Uncle Fran has really been the father figure for me. And anytime I have any questions about anything, I call him, and he gets back if he's in the middle of something or if he's out of town, and we
Right.
just have a great relationship. And I feel very, very, very fortunate that our relationship is what it is.
Yeah, I find a lot of the nepotism does occur in baseball because of the father son,
Yeah.
but it does happen in other sports. And again, another segue by you talking about Uncle Fran. Hopefully, one of these days you can get in touch with him. And I'd love to be able to talk to him one day. I've always marveled at him. If you don't mind trying to help me out a little bit there. But yeah, you talk about Fran Tarkenton being your uncle, how you and his influence. But did you have a chance to see him play a lot? I mean, this guy was ahead of his time. I can only wonder how much money he would have made in today's NFL
Yeah.
with his ability to scramble all over the place.
That was survival, especially early with the expansion team with the Vikings. He was running around trying to keep from getting
Yeah,
crushed. We made some trips to Minnesota. We made some trips to Yankee Stadium, and then a lot of times during the Thanksgiving holiday, the Giants would play in Washington D.C. and we had some family members that were in Northern Virginia and in the Norfolk area. And so we would make those trips. But, as we got older, we got more involved with our stuff. And I have two younger brothers. So it
right.
was harder to get away. If they played in Atlanta against the Falcons, we could go to see that. But we got as many games as we could. My dad was really close. They would talk every Sunday night after games.
Yeah,
They would stay on the phone for a long, long time. And that was that was kind of neat to know that they were that close. In fact, a lot of people don't know this. Fran's very first contract with the Vikings, my dad was the one that did the putting it together and working on it to come up with the money and so forth, or what they were going to pay. And it's always been kind of neat to know that they were that close, and they always were that close. And so I like that, and I really am very appreciative of my uncle, of his relationship with us, my wife and my boys, and very, 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 very thankful for him and the fact that he's 84 years old and still
wow.
sharp as a tack.
Well,
Um,
it sounds like he's been a really great father figure for you over the year,
yeah,
and since your dad left, he seems to be picking up the slack a little bit, doesn't he?
yeah. My dad died of Alzheimer's. He first
Okay.
first had it when he was in his 60s, and he lived for about 13 years with it. So it was
Wow.
a long haul. It was tough for my mother, but my uncle Fran and I talked a lot during that time, and he. Well, I don't want to go all the way down this road, but I will a little bit. At the funeral, I had to be the one to speak because there was nobody in my family that could probably speak except me. And
Right.
I think one of the most poignant moments for me was we're walking out of the church, and Uncle Fran comes up and he's just got tears in his eyes, and I'm trying not to, and he hugs me and tells me he loves me, and he said, "Dipper, that was fantastic."
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess I needed that probably from somebody that was like a father figure, and but it meant a lot to me at that point. So,
That's a
kind
great
of,
story. Sure. Thanks for sharing it with us too. I
yeah,
really,
that's
yeah, yeah. But I'll tell you, your uncle Fran had to work with a guy named Howard Cosell too.
he did.
Did he ever give you stories about what it was like to deal with Mister Coupe?
he he said Cosell was just a trip. He would never tell us a lot of bad stories because he's always upbeat and positive too. And I've tried to gain some of that knowledge from him, that you got to stay upbeat, you got to stay enthusiastic, you got to stay excited. But he said he was something to be around. He loved being around Gifford. He loved being around Meredith. But he said Cosell was just a trip. He said you didn't
Yeah.
know what was coming out of him next. But Cosell was hilarious. If you think about it, he was just priceless. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Monday Night Football.
Yeah, now let me tell you one thing about Cosell. He turned me down for an interview at the
Wow.
Orange Bowl. I was young, okay.
Yeah.
So you know who I ended up talking to instead? It actually worked out better. I mean, rest in peace, whether you like the guy or not. I went to OJ Simpson. OJ was great for me, and OJ let me go as long as I needed to. And I asked the same different question 5 times. He gave me 5 different answers. So now here you are, looking at a young guy like me talking to OJ Simpson back in the day
Pretty
when
cool.
everybody
Yeah.
liked him. I'm not going to get into the other stuff. It's not it. He's actually was a good part of my lifetime back in the day when I was young. They said,
Right.
"You have some pretty good questions, kid." I said,
Yeah.
"Well, thanks,
Well, that's
OJ. I appreciate you very much." Hey, when you're a young guy, Chip, let's not kid ourselves. You need all the confidence you can get anywhere you can get it.
correct.
And when you get it from somebody like that, it probably makes you feel much higher than that. So I'm with you. I mean, but thanks
You-
to Cosell, I got OJ. That was not the worst consolation
well,
prize.
let me give you an example of that. You're exactly right. When I moved to Birmingham, Bill Curry was the head football coach at Alabama, and
Okay.
Pat Dye was the head football coach at Auburn. And guess what? I knew both of them. I had been around Coach Curry because he and Uncle Fran were like this.
Right.
And of course, Pat Dye played with Uncle Fran at University of Georgia, so they were like this. So it was amazing what we were able to do because those guys were unbelievable to help me.
Yeah.
And it was just like this is pretty cool. I was
Yeah.
enjoying that. That was a fun time, and two just wonderful, wonderful gentlemen.
Well, everybody, just in case you're joining us, my name is Scott Morgan, North Motor City Man Mouth. Pleased to be joined by Chip Tarkenton. Chip, to me, has been a good friend of mine for a long, long time. And I actually met him on LinkedIn, and Chip and I have always been in touch. And you can rest assured we're going to be in touch a whole lot more, even after this interview, because we're already planning on some other stuff down the road. But we're having an opportunity to get to know Chip Tarkenton in depth. We're talking about the person, the career. He's trying to give everybody advice what to do in the business. So you know what the thing is if you have an opportunity, if you're just joining us to watch us, go ahead and do it. I can tell you what. But when you do, make sure you have a pen and paper because you're going to want to go out there and absorb every piece of information that you can get. I don't know if you're really worried about my story, but listen to his anyways,
Well,
because this guy gives you some good stuff. I mean, and it's just so pleasant to be able to finally have you on here. And you
thank
know,
you. I
so
appreciate it.
where is Chip? I mean, where is Fran living these days?
He's in Atlanta. He's always been in Atlanta after he graduated from Georgia. They would go to Minneapolis during the football season, obviously, but then they always had a home in Atlanta. He's always based out of Atlanta. He loves Atlanta. He will never leave Atlanta. Just as loved it, and it's been good for him business wise too. Pretty easy to fly out of Atlanta, so
Yeah.
that's home. And his children are all we're all
Hmm.
tight, and so that's just another fun thing that we've had happen. And so I love being around his grown young ones who are closer to my age than my children are that are grown.
Right. Well, I mean, so tell me what your plans are for this fall. Do you have any things lined up here?
Well, yeah, I'm definitely going to do the Old Dominion games again and the
Okay.
VMI games, and I'm talking to a couple others. I've got a couple of weeks it might be open, but I don't know yet because it changes as we go along. I still do some commercial work locally. I may wind up helping out with that school again, and but there's some other things that are in the kitty, and we'll just see what happens. I'm to that point to where I just really want to do what I want to do. I don't want to get
Mhm.
into something that I don't think I'll enjoy. And also, I tell folks, I'm going to be honest with you. If it's not something my heart is in, you don't want me because,
Right.
you want me as me. You don't want me to come to you and go through the motions. That's not good for you, and it's really not good for me. So I'm looking at some things that I want to keep expanding some things. I've had even some college groups that have said, "Hey, would you teach us a broadcasting class and Zoom it?" And while that may have some interest, I don't know that I can teach through Zoom or through any other of
Right.
these.
No, I'm with you.
I just think you got to be in the classroom. So I'm still battling with that if that's something I really want to do. And we'll see, and something will come along. It always does. It's crazy. My wife is talking about this. It's just nuts. Things come out of left field, and you go, that'd kind of be fun to do. And now I'm willing to try some things maybe I would never have tried before.
That makes a whole lot of sense. You know what I've been finding lately? Guys like Kenny Albert and
Yeah,
Chris Myers. I actually met Kenny. Well, I've known him when we met at the All Star
yeah,
game in Tampa a few years ago, but we caught up with each other last week. But what people are starting to do, especially when they get into their mid 50s and 60s, you're seeing a lot of us older guys write books.
yes.
Is what you're doing, and I'm falling into that category too. I've got another one I'm going to be working on by the end of the year, which will be obviously the part two of this,
Yeah.
and the lesson from the microphone part two. But another one I'm going to be working on is a baseball book, and then I'm going to try to dive into the children's market. And you're ready for this one? Writing about money. Why would I write about money? I don't know anything about it. Let the quarters talk. Let the nickels talk. Let the dollar bills talk. Let them know where they've been. I mean, and I think that once I get the quarter to talk, hey, you know what? I visited this place. And that's when you have an opportunity to get creative. And I think the one thing you do as a writer is you have to become creative as well.
Yeah.
And that's if you don't, you're in trouble. And I have one story I'm aching to get out to you. We'll have a couple minutes left to go, but I'm going to get this one in. And
Go.
that's
Sure.
this.
Go.
I'm
Go.
doing it, man. Thank you, my buddy. I appreciate it. Well, anyways, back in the day in 1979, something like that. Can I count that high? Who cares? Whatever. I take this creative writing 2 class. I'll never forget the woman. Her name was Miss Ann Nozeski. What a beautiful woman, too. I'll tell you, she was absolutely adorable. She tells everybody in the class, okay, you got to get something published. Everybody. Hey, we're all what? Juniors or sophomores in high school? Seriously? You're asking us to get
Sure.
published?
Yeah, we can do that. Piece of cake.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what a lot of people think. So, but what she did know about me was I actually had taken a job over at WXYZ ABC Radio, and I
Yeah.
met a guy named George Eichhorn who wrote for the Detroit Monitor.
Yeah.
So, he asked me to write a couple paragraphs because at that time the Detroit teams were awful. I mean, god awful. Not that they're doing much better these days, but they get a little bit better. But keep it related to the Back to the Past, not Back to the Future. Okay, presented. I forget that business, anyways. See, I do ramble them off quick. So I haven't had that much caffeine today either. But if I had caffeine, I'd be a whole lot worse than I am tonight. But anyways, so I do get that little blurb published. I
Yeah.
wasn't satisfied, but I showed her.
Yeah. You
Okay,
should.
not bad.
You should. I mean, you proved your worth by showing that.
Oh,
Handed it over. Yeah.
but it gets better. Okay, here's where it really really gets better. Okay, at that time, Jimmy Carter made a decision to boycott the Olympics back in '80.
Yeah.
And I wrote a paper on don't boycott the Olympics. I don't think politics and sports should be tied together. That woman had the gall to grade me down on it from an A to an A minus. Is what she did. I'm thinking, you know, caught on a shit, the mole head. So I go over to Eichhorn, over at the station, do me a favor. Get this thing published. I have a reason. Don't even question me, okay? And he'll be on later on in the Sports Exchange later. So I don't agree with your opinions too. I don't care what you agree with. Get the darn thing published. I was adamant and telling him the way it is. It wasn't me being nice. I had
Right.
a point to prove here. So, anyways, he does. So he gives me a bunch of copies, which is good. I take the thing there, and I was keeping like, man, I'm really blowing up now. I
Yeah.
took one of those copies, I slammed it on her desk. I mean, I slammed it as hard as I could. And she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Come here, Miss Nozeski, look at this." Now, instead of the couple paragraphs, get that. Now we got a real story here. You
Correct.
disagreed with me and you made me angry. And you know what? Now I got it published. What do you have to say? I'm impressed.
That's it.
I'm impressed. You proved your point.
Yeah.
And you know what? I did take another class with her a year later. I was never making it on time because I had to work late at night. And she would say,
Yeah.
grade me, and I'll say, Miss Ozeski, rather than grade me down because of attendance, just fail me. No, no, I'm not going to. What do you do at night? I go out there, work at a restaurant, I'll get home till 11, 11.
Right.
All right, I'll let you pass. And
Yeah.
you know what? I think the built in respect there, Chip, was attributed. It goes back where you asked me to do something. I didn't care about the stupid paragraphs, big whippy do. But when you had a story like that on a very tough topic to deal with, then the relationship, the trust, and the credibility at that point was created. And you have to have all of those assets and attributes if you're going to succeed in any business, let alone ours. So I'm kind of at a point like I'm with you, okay? I've done a lot in the business, and, you know, whether I'm covering games a year and a half from now, I don't know. Only I'll know in my mind whether it's time to take that public speaking route or write books or do different things. But regardless, our industry teaches you not only to not burn your bridges, but it teaches you all kinds of English skills and communication skills, which is why I think both of us benefited by having a speech communication
Absolutely.
degree over and plus speech improvement in phonetics too, where you pronounce the names, what you were alluding to earlier in the show. So,
Yeah.
but
Could have gone a lot of ways with a speech communications degree. I've always told folks that. And I said the power of being able to speak is huge because so many people can't or don't want to or afraid to. You know, I think the question that, and one of the boys in my class had told me this, and I'd heard it before, but said the biggest fear folks have is not of dying, it's getting up and speaking in front of a crowd. Think about that. So if you go and you get a speech comm degree, you have no choice. You have to learn to get over that. You have to learn. You need some butterflies. If you don't have any butterflies, then it doesn't matter to you. You need to feel something in you that pushes you to do that. But I just think it's so important if you can speak in public.
I never had butterflies. You know what I had, Chip? I had too much arrogance and not want to have them. And I also had this guy, and I've done enough eulogies with this thing where, you know what? I can make a very sad funeral look like a comedy show and still keep the atmosphere loose. And you know
Yeah.
what? I'm not bragging about it. I'm just saying, listen, we all know funerals aren't very fun. We can all tell you that. But if you
Usually,
can add a little bit of humor to them, at least
correct.
you can cushion the blow just a little bit. And like you, in my family, I was the most qualified person to go out there and do these things. And what I did with one of my grandmothers is this, okay? I went out there and to, use all kinds of stats and make her look like the greatest woman in the world because I compared her to baseball. So
Well, I've done 10 of the family, so I think I've done a good number. I'm not
yeah,
not proud to say it was me, but that's the number.
yeah, I've done about 5 or 6. I don't know how many, at least 5. But you know what? I felt I had to do it. I felt like if I'm going to let the individual, if the individual's going to go, let him go away with at least a good bang, the
Yeah,
right way. So,
right. I'm with you. Totally with you.
but meanwhile, I want to thank Chip Tarkenton for joining me here on the Motor City Mad Miles show. And again, if you want to get a hold of us, you can contact us here at the network. And of course, my direct email, if you want to, is southfloridatribune@gmail.com. So, Chip, is there any way that people want to get a hold of you? And once again, LinkedIn is unquestionably one of the best social
Yeah,
media tools out there as well.
that's probably the easiest. Yeah.
Is that LinkedIn? Yeah,
Yeah,
you can get us
I
both
would say
there.
that's because uh, email. Who knows if I get to it, and be patient with me. I'm usually really good, but my next 3, 4, 5 weeks are really going to be hectic. So be patient with me if you send something because it's just I got a lot going on in this window coming up, and I don't want folks to think, okay, he said he'd pay attention and all this. Just understand that it may take me a while to get back to you.
Well, I got football myself. I got the Miami Hurricanes to deal with, Florida
Yeah.
Atlantic University Owls, and University of South Florida Mine. And besides, I like texting you anyways and calling you, so that's even better. But not everybody's going to get your number, but I'm just glad that you and I can communicate more correctly. But once again, Chip, it's been a blast having you on the
Yeah.
show.
Thank
Not
you.
that you and I didn't know we were going to have fun to begin with when we talked, but so from two speech communication majors here in the Motor City Mad Mouse Show, I want to thank everybody for joining us as well. And I look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. So thanks for joining us. And Chip, God bless. It was great having you on the show, buddy. And
Thank
we'll
you.
talk
Enjoyed it.
soon.
All righty. Be well.
Be well.